Stuart Holbrook has spent his life in the world of collectors. As president of Theriaults, the world's leader in the auction of antique dolls and figurative art for over 30 years, he's managed the often personal and always wild world of collecting and collectors. His market expertise and knowledge of trends comes to life in The Curious Collector, where he shares his experience and experiences in real-life stories, alongside sage advice on how to build great collections within the happy life of a collector.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Curious Collector. I can't believe it. It's episode 20. 20. We've gotten through and just started this in late fall, I think, and we're already up to this new episode, and it's been so much fun. When I started this podcast, I was imagining I might do one a month maybe, and then I was having so much fun with it and really enjoying it that Tammy, the producer here, encouraged me to kind of do more traditional podcasting, which is trying to drop once a week. So I will tell you that I failed last week, and a lot of it was, wow, did I have a schedule. I had 5 of my table talk lectures at doll clubs in Southern California, and then literally had to be up at 4 a.m. and flying back east to do the Bill Greening Barbie auction, which was a wonderful success. And if you haven't listened to the interviews I've done with Bill Greening in the previous 2 episodes, go back and have a listen to those at some point. It's a really great insight into the world of designing for Barbie and his life with Barbie from the origins of his childhood, really, and all the way up until this momentous moment of selling parts of his collection. And results and the response and the engagement was incredible. The highest engaged auction in Theriault's history. That is the more registered bidders and bids executed compared to any auction, and that includes even Shirley Temple. So that gives you the, I think, twofold message in that people love Bill Greening and people love Barbie. So anyway, it was a heck of a week, and I was not able to get a podcast out to you. So for that, I apologize. But I think we're back on track now. And today, I'm coming to you from Phoenix, and I am working my way towards Texas for a whole new round of table talks. Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, and then up to Oklahoma to Tulsa, and then back to Texas for more. So great fun coming up here, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody deep in the heart of Texas. You never thought you'd heard me sing on Curious Collector, but there it is. That may be the last time as well. So today we're here to talk about marriage, spouses, partners, and collecting. And that is kind of having a conversation with both sides of the coin. Now, I do not profess to be a marriage counselor. I am not a professional at this, but I certainly have sat in a lot of living rooms around the world. As you know, I always say I've been in more women's boudoirs than any man in the world. So I have heard the stories, listened to both husbands and wives and partners all talking about different aspects from their different perspective of being either the collector or the partner or spouse of the collector. And I want to talk about this today in helping both sides see the perspective of ways to bring people together a little bit more in collecting, because the reality is, I have seen this over and over through the years. Couples who collect together. Now, I'm not saying your partner who is the, in quotations, quintessential non-collector has to become a true doll lover, for example, or baseball card lover. But just having that respect and validation is so key and actually can make for a much better collecting experience from your side. And I have noticed couples who are involved in collecting together build greater collections. They absolutely do. There is no doubt about it. And we'll talk a little bit more in this podcast to kind of address the idea of how and why they are able to build greater collections. And it's not just about money, pooling money or anything along those lines. It is a lot of times just simply validation. So I talk about this subject quite a bit, actually, in my Table Talk lectures. So some of you may have heard these points, and then I'll add a few more. But I was stimulated to bring this up in the podcast and discuss it because the other day I was having a phone call and a conversation with a lovely collector in Louisiana, Terry Viola, who is an absolute joy to speak to. And if you have never met Terry, hopefully you will one day. And she is building one of the great collections of the world. So we were laughing on the phone as I was driving through the desert from California to Phoenix. And she was telling me about this gardening video because Terry, like a lot of doll collectors, also loves to garden. And wow, does she ever have a garden. It's pretty amazing. If you see it on Facebook, she posts pictures all the time, and it's impressive. So she was talking about this video that came out on Instagram from this gardening expert or a guy who owns a gardening store or something along those lines of all the things spouses should do to make their wives happy in regards to their garden. So it was kind of like, first of all, build them a garden. Second of all, buy them trellises and help them buy new plants, help them plant those plants. And then my favorite one at the end, take pictures of her with her flowers. I was absolutely loving this. And I was saying to Terry, oh my gosh, I've got to do something about this in the same light and refer it to doll collectors and their spouses. What can their spouse do for the doll collector that, as I said, engages them and validates them, as this video mentioned with the idea of gardening? So I came up with a little list of 10 things that spouses can help their collector partner with in building these great collections and doing things which will, I think, involve them in positive and fun manners. So the first one, you spend so much time on your doll collecting that I think vignettes and displays become equally as important to the presentation and the representation of your dolls, not only to yourself for your own enjoyment, but when you share them with others. So, hey, number one, for the spouse, why don't you buy them really nice cases for their dolls? Supervise the installation to give them this wonderful personal museum that they can be proud of. Heck, you could even, if you're handy, you can build them cases, custom cases, and give them an opportunity to be able to properly display their dolls. And this will also help you work with them in containing them in different sections within the house in a more livable manner. So I see this all the time, that collectors really do have a problem with space. Space is one of the biggest issues in building a collection. Where do you put it? How do you put it there? How do you display it? How do you make it look representative of the importance of this figurative art? So if you can buy or build them cases and work with them on these displays, you are going a long way to helping them towards a greater collection that they can enjoy and see and share with others. You all have spare bedrooms. Well, I shouldn't assume all of you, but a lot of you have spare bedrooms that ultimately sit unused for most of the year, except when you have a couple of visitors occasionally. And the reality being that they will help to make a beautiful little museum of figurative art for your spouse. So why not embrace a conversion of those spare rooms into that? It will help confine, again, the dolls for you. It'll help give you a fresh new palette in which to build those cases that you're going to do, and give your spouse an opportunity to have a little bit of a retreat. And really, hey, let's look at the reality. Do you really want people visiting you all the time? Now you have an excuse. I'm sorry, our spare guest room is now a figurative art museum. You're welcome to come and see it. And there's a great hotel right down the road. So I know some of you may like visitors, but anyway, if you don't, now you have an excuse. Hey, if you don't have a spare room, why not build them an addition? I know you're laughing, but come on. Or convert a basement or attic. If you have a big enough property, how about building in the back a special doll facility, custom made for their needs? I've seen this before with a lot of collectors' spouses that said, you know what? I want to encourage your collecting. I want you to have the opportunity for space, because as we mentioned, space is one of the critical issues that collectors have in their growth and evolving over the years. So this is the greatest gift of all. I'm going to build you a small, let's call it dollhouse out in the back with a beautiful pathway and maybe even next to your garden where you can create your own retreat and your own special isolated place for your doll collection and be able to expand. I love this idea, and I've seen people do this, and it's really fun, and it becomes a sort of, I don't want to call it a library. I called it a retreat, and I think that's a good word for your spouse. And if you don't like the dolls in the house, well, here it is. You've isolated them out. I don't want to say you put them in the backyard, but you get the point. You've given them a private, wonderful little facility in which to enjoy their collecting, and you can make it big enough that they can even have doll club meetings there, friends over, whatever. It works well, but of course, you do need a big property for this, so it doesn't work for everyone and probably for a vast minority of the collectors out there. What else can a spouse do? How about spend 2 hours a week admiring and commenting on their dolls and just listening to the stories they tell you about them? I mean, come on. It's 2 hours a week. You can do this. You think, oh, well, I don't need to tell them this. They already know it. I don't need to tell them that their dolls are fantastic or, wow, I love this new edition. They're happy with it. That's enough. No, you would be shocked at how much, again, I'll use this word a lot today, validation will mean to them in their collecting progression. Doll collectors especially, they don't get a whole lot of validation out there in the world. And I've talked about this before. It stems from a number of different things. It stems from the concept of dolls. It's misogyny related to women. It is the creepy doll aspect. They're struggling through a lot already. And it should be from their spouse or their family. You would hope that they would get the validation needed to really make them comfortable and confident in the positiveness of their connection to dolls and figurative art, because it really does mean something. It's an extension of who they are. They need this validation. And so give it to them. Spend 2 hours a week, walk around, listen to them tell stories. And for the collectors out there, remember too, tell the stories. Telling them that, oh, the eyelashes are beautiful isn't going to cut it. You need to tell them stories about the doll, that this will help connect them and engage them. And for the spouses of the collectors, just give 2 hours a week. Next one is accept this in your life. You cannot stop a collector. You can't. Give up. You can only hope to contain them, as I often say, but you can't stop them. Realize, though, that by being engaged with their passion, you can better understand and maintain the support. And within this, you can help them, as a result, become a better collector. And the reward for you, be far more focused in their collecting. 4 eyes are better than 2. Give them those extra 2 eyes. You may see things differently than they do. You will see things differently. And you will probably allow them space in which to grow as a collector into higher levels of items, which will result in the idea of the containing them. That is, if you try to stop them, they're just going to keep doing it. But they're not going to do it with an idea of quality. They're going to do it in a stealth manner, as I'll talk about later. And this ultimately will defeat a lot of the idea of building a smaller collection of higher quality. Because, I've always said over the years that a great collection goes down in size and up in value. And the collectors need to be very focused on going to the top end of what they can afford, rather than the quantity of compromises. So with your encouragement, they will be able to do this in that you can accept that you cannot stop them from collecting, but you can contain them. Next one is find an aspect of their collection that you can relate to. I don't know what. Something within there that you have a connection with, because every non-collector can look at a doll collection and go, oh, wow, this one, I remember this item, or I know who this represents, or wow, this is an automaton. It's a clockwork mechanism. That's really cool. Find something within that you can relate to and talk to your collector spouse about this. Learn more and be involved as you mix and match between all of these worlds of things that you relate to and all the things that they're passionate about, and connect within those. Hey, be grateful that they have a passion, that collecting is such a happy endeavor. It beats sitting on social media all day, right? I mean, you want them to have this incredible focus in their life of something that is positive, happy, protective, and a happy collector is a happy spouse and makes for a fun and happy home. So be grateful for this passion and encourage it as much as you can. Be happy that their passion is not one which involves that, well, you would get nothing in return. Will you make money on a collection? Often not, but you'll get something back in the end. And sometimes it might even be more. So what's the alternative? Well, there is a garden, I guess, but I don't know if anybody's ever made money on a garden. I guess you could sell your flowers, and I guess it increases the value of your real estate. So there is that, but they could be going every year, so let's say every 3 months, going on trips to Italy or Egypt or Asia and spending $20,000 because you go on those. And I think that's great too. Everybody should travel as well. But if they do it a lot, they go on these, they spend $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, they come back. Do you get any money back in the end? Not a thing. So how about looking at this as a positive and, oh, wow, we actually get something back from something that brings them so much joy and happiness and friendships in their life. I think this is really cool. Hey, once in a while, just tell them, wow, I'm so proud of what you are achieving as a collector, and I'm so happy that these dolls make you happy. See, that's not so hard. 2 sentences that you can say every few weeks, reminding them that you are proud of them. Because, as I said before, they don't get enough validation. How about getting it from you? And you will be shocked at how wonderful this will make them feel. Even when I go in to see a collection and meet a collector, and I tell them, I love your collection. It has vision. It is an extension of you. It is a beautiful representation of the things that you are passionate about. You are a great protector of history. Hearing it from me, and I'm nobody, I'm not their spouse, you should see the beam of smile on their face. I see it in their eyes, how proud they feel, because they don't get anyone else really telling them that. And so from their own spouse, if you can just take time occasionally to remark on the collection, to say how beautiful it is, to say how fascinating these stories are, and to say how proud of them you are, you will go a long way in, again, helping them and encouraging them to become a great collector. Finally, the last idea I would have for every spouse to truly make your collecting partner feel joy and pride in their hobby and their passion is, I've got a great idea for a gift for you to do. And it's a really simple one nowadays. Make a book for them as a surprise of their collection with photos and a documentation of their life in this collecting. It can be photos of their dolls, photos of their doll displays, which you've helped so beautifully with in the cabinets, and even helping them place dolls and make vignettes. It could be pictures of them at auctions or shows or with doll friends or at doll meetings, and creating sort of a documented life of their collecting. These are so easy to do online right now. You just need photos. You can write a little bit about it with captions. And I've seen this before because Umar Buktis in Vienna, a dear friend of mine, whose wife Hannah Buktis was one of the great collectors of the past 2 generations. He used to do every couple of years a new book for her that documented one of her particular genres of collections. And it would be about her life in this genre, what she discovered, how she evolved in it, and featuring many of the pieces and pictures of her standing alongside these items. And I thought it was such a beautiful gift. Trust me, your collector spouse will love this, and it will solve your issues next Christmas of what do I get them. So this is a great, great way to make them happy and make them feel that validation. So remember, it's not all financial. It's not just that you need to give them financial help. Maybe you don't. And maybe they have their own finances. In many cases, that has changed quite a bit over the years. So it's not just saying, hey, I want to help you buy this next doll that you're dreaming of, though I know collectors would love that too. But just telling them that I encourage you and I support you and I love what you're looking at. This really can help a great deal, far more even than the money, because it gives them confidence. I wonder sometimes if there is that lack of confidence. As I know, and I sit at auctions and you see people bidding, and I can see in their eyes sometimes them wondering, am I paying too much? Am I not paying enough? Do I need to be more aggressive? Should I be less aggressive? Should I wait for the next one? Should I not go in this? You're encouraging them. This validation helps them become a bit more confident, and they will buy better as a result. And as I mentioned this before, they will buy less in the end. And you're telling me, well, that's crazy. Why would they buy less if I'm encouraging them? Because they will have this confidence of support to go for the better items, the top items, over lesser, more stealth purchases. And I come up with this term, and I kind of love it. Stealth collecting. So what is stealth collecting? It is ultimately the idea that your spouse will notice more if you buy a $10,000 doll, but they will probably not notice if you buy a couple $100 doll. So you end up buying a whole lot of couple $100 dolls just to kind of stealthily bring them into the house, rather than really going for the big one that you really, really want. And so you end up with more dolls, and you end up with compromises when in the end it would have been the same amount of money. You just would have bought something you really wanted because you had the validation and the encouragement from your spouse. I hope that makes sense, because I've seen this before. It's why I always joke in the auctions. It's been an old line joke for years. When we sell something small, I always joke, hey, it's purse size. You can sneak it in the house. And everybody laughs, and I know that laugh is a knowing one. I can see that a lot of you have done it before. I want to give you an example of these collectors that I've mentioned before in previous podcasts. So if I'm repeating some of these stories, I apologize, but I know there's always new listeners who may start with the latest episode. So I always love telling the story of Chuck and Fran in San Diego, California, two great collectors that I've known since my childhood, if you can believe it. They've been around collecting for many, many decades, and they are in their mid-90s now, doing great, fantastic in their home, and have built one of the greatest collections in the world. And Chuck and Fran, for me, are the quintessential couple collectors that have built a great collection because they have done it together. I mean, we call it Fran's collection because she really is, of the two of them, she's the one who is the doll lover, let's call it. But Chuck enjoys them as well, and he even has certain things he loves that he sort of bought for his own little personal collection. Like he has a fascination with Max and Moritz, and he loves Max and Moritz. So he has a couple pairs of Max and Moritzes. But Chuck, overall, more than anything, has just been supportive in the process and the hobby of collecting with Fran, both coming to auctions, going to doll club meetings, going to shows, traveling with her to events, and helping to encourage her in certain selections she makes of very, very high-end pieces. So they are fabulous. And Chuck, I joke about this, and I've told the story again, so bear with me, but it was Chuck really that got Fran started in this idea of collecting years ago. It was like 1966, 67. Chuck's walking around San Diego, and he's trying to desperately find the day before Christmas, as every husband is, a gift for their spouse. And so he walked by this antique shop, and he saw this German doll sitting in the window. And he thought, now Fran didn't collect dolls, but there's something about that doll that just struck him that he felt like Fran would really like this. So he went in and he bought that doll, paid, I think he told me $65 for it. And he wrapped it up and he presented it to her Christmas morning. And there's a picture that they still have. And they often have it on the refrigerator because it's a great reminder of the beginning of their collection. And a picture of Fran opening the box and this just, oh my gosh, you should see the look on her face, just absolute joy. But she wasn't a doll collector, so she just put the doll up as like a piece of figurative art, a display item in a case, and put it there and just admired it for a few weeks until one day she realized, that doll looks so lonely all by itself. and every collector is shaking their head. Yes, I know this feeling. And so she decided that doll needed a friend. So she went down into that antique shop that Chuck went and found another doll and bought that one. And that became a friend for this original gift from Chuck. And then it just expanded on from there. Now they have a multi-million-dollar collection, and Chuck jokes that that was the most expensive Christmas gift he ever bought in the end. But it's a great story in that Chuck learned to really love this as well. So inevitably, at every auction, you'll have Chuck and Fran sitting there in the second row on the right-hand side where they've sat over many, many years. And Fran will bid. Fran will then drop out, and then Chuck will take over the bidding, and he'll go a little bit further. And so it's a beautiful thing to witness these couples sharing in this hobby and passion together. And I think auctions, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, are a fantastic way to bring your spouse into the energy of the environment of collecting, and that will become something they can really identify and relate to. So in this world, we have many types of relationships and partnerships and marriages out there. And reality being within the world of dolls, we primarily have 95%, as I've always talked about, and it is a real data-driven number. 95% of all collectors are women, and the vast majority of them have husbands. And so the reality comes to be that you have to find ways to engage your husband in this sort of female-dominated hobby. So how can you do it? I've given the tips for the partner or the spouse to better engage their collector spouse. And now I'm going to give you tips of how you can engage your partner, who the majority will be husbands, in this process of collecting, ways that you can actually make them interested. So I talked about it a few minutes ago, and that is the auctions. Auctions are for especially a male spouse. Auctions are ultimately like a football game. They're like a reality show. And it really is validating for them, not you, for them, that there is a real market out there and real value to these objects. It's not just you that's into them. There are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of other collectors globally engaging in this and battling over this. And they love a good battle. So this is a really great lesson. And a lot of collectors say, oh, God, I could never get my husband to come to an auction or whatever, or sit there for 8 hours, or they're going to be bored. Or my favorite one, I don't want them there. I don't want them to see how much I'm spending. That's a real one, actually. But I actually think getting them to an auction is a fantastic exercise in having them realize the realities of this market, as I said before. Now, you even have the ability to do it at home. And I agree, you may not get them a way to come to a sale and sit there for 8 hours. But if you're watching online on the big screen a particular auction, and there's a couple of fabulous pieces coming up that are inevitably going to have a lot of interest and go for potentially record pricing, have them just come in and sit for a few minutes and just watch this moment. And watch the bidding and watch the frenzy and watch the numbers rolling down the screen. And I'm telling you, you're going to see their eyes light up. It is like a football game. So the second tip I'll have for you is stop talking about how beautiful the dolls are. And I mentioned this earlier. They don't care. That's not necessarily what they're seeing. And they're not looking at them the same as you are. He won't relate to that. So what you need to do, or what I suggest you do, is tell the stories of the dolls. Find connections in your dolls to history that he likes, or to aspects of his career, or perhaps his heritage, if he's German, as an example, or his family came from German heritage. Show him dolls that are dressed in original provincial period costumes of that time, and have a discussion about, oh, isn't this cool? This is a representation of what your family might have worn back in the 19th century in Germany, in the village they came from. So this is a really great way to connect. He's not going to relate to, wow, this is a rare closed mouth variation. Isn't that fantastic? Or look at the painting of the eyelashes, how beautiful they are. That's just not going to cut it. Give him history, give him drama, and a good story to understand. The third tip for collectors is respect their boundaries of space. Talk to your partner, talk to your spouse about where they're comfortable having cases and displays or vignettes. Don't just make the decisions for them. Work to balance a compromise of a collection within a home that is, as I said before, respecting their space as well. In this process, as I mentioned earlier in the tips for the spouse, you can build the cases for this as you work together to build this museum within your home in a way that balances both of your needs in this living space. The next one, involve them. Show them items you are interested in. Show them your bucket list dolls and explain what they mean to you. This is actually fun. It's not just emotionally, but from a standpoint of you're building a collection that is fitting within the context of the vision you're creating. So you can have dreams, and every collector has dreams of their dolls. Why not share that with your spouse? Reminding them all the time that this is an extension of who you are. And it's not just a whim, but you're looking and showing and sharing with them important additions that you dream of that will build this identity even more. This will be far more impactful to them in the process of their wanting you and validating you to build a great collection. And I will tell you, they will most likely help you. Again, I'm not necessarily talking about financial help, but help you with the confidence to push forward to get those pieces and maybe give you some advice and maybe give you a little financial help as well, possibly if you need it. I talked about bringing them to the auction. Go further than that. If you bring them to an auction, or even if you're sitting at home online, let them do the bidding. Let them have the fun. This is what they will love. Give them a paddle. Tell them, I want this doll. Can you get it for me? And I tell this story and I love it because, there is a fundamental difference between men and women at auctions. Women are pragmatic, which is why I often say women should ultimately probably run the world. And men, they are very different. We are warriors and we go to battle. And bidding for men is very testosterone driven. And that's why you look at all of the major collectible hobbies that are male dominated, like comic baseball cards, sports memorabilia, stamps, coins, collector cars. You're talking about world record pricing that approaches 5, 10, 15, 20, and in the case of collector cars, $30 million. Yet the world record for a doll is $335,000, and one of the most incredible, fantastical creations ever made in history in the world of dolls, and that's the Rochard, which is really not a doll. It is a piece of figurative art, as I often say. So why is there such a disparity? And it is because men relish in the idea of battles at auctions. So let your spouse have this battle at the auction. And I tell this story because it is a great one. And it really is a wonderful look into the mindset of the collector, who in the world of dolls is 95% female, and the spouse, who are often men. We had an auction at the Waldorf Astoria in 2015. I mentioned this earlier, her name, the collection of Hannah Bouktis, specifically her French fashion collection, which was one of the greatest auctions of French fashions ever to come on the market. So we're having this event, and this one particular fashion comes up that was estimated about $3,000 to $4,000, somewhere $3,000 to $3,800, somewhere in that range. So we had one major, very, very well respected and prosperous collector sitting in the second row with her husband. And then in the first row, a new collector as well, very prosperous, building now one of the great collections of the world, also sitting there. And her husband came along as well, as they lived in New York City. So here we are, this doll comes up. And the new collector in the first row starts bidding at $3,000, and then I go to $3,200, and the bidder in the second row, she raises her hand, she goes $32,000, and I go back to $34,000, yes, $36,000, yes, $38,000, yes, $4,000. I go to the woman in the second row, and she says, well, she thinks about it, looks at the picture in the catalog, looks at the doll, and says no. Well, her husband looks at her and looks up at the doll, and all of a sudden, he's like, we're getting this. And he raises his hand and he holds it up high and he does not put it down. So I've got my 4,000. I go back to 4,200 to the woman in the first row. She does the same thing, looks at the catalog, looks at the doll, and then says, no, I'm done. Well, her husband looks at her, but even more so, looks back in the second row and sees this man, this other husband, with his arm raised high, ready to go to war. So he takes over the bidding and he raises his hand. Now, on the podium, this is an auctioneer's dream. I'm like, oh, yes, here we go. So he got up within 3 minutes. I don't remember the exact number, but it was in the $35,000 to $40,000 within 2 or 3 minutes on this doll. The entire time, the two women are screaming at their husbands, trying to pull their arm down and saying, stop, stop, with the one saying, if you don't stop, I'll divorce you tomorrow. And I mean, it was incredible. The men were laughing and having the greatest time in the world. They were going on to battle. And so this is a really important lesson in why, well, some of you might say, well, that's a horrifying thing. I don't want my husband going out of hand and bidding wildly on stuff, but why not? Let them have some fun. It's really great. And maybe especially if it's a doll that is a bucket list doll that you've dreamed of your whole life, a doll that when you walked in and saw it in the room, you just, wow, it made your heart sing. On those pieces, that extra bit of testosterone from your husband may be the push you need to really go for it, and you'll be glad in the end you did, because ultimately, you know what I always say. How much do you pay for a doll that truly makes your heart sing, a doll that's been a bucket list doll for years, a doll that you may not see again or may take many decades to see again? You pay whatever it takes within your budget. So having your husband there is a great adjunct to this and pushing even harder and giving you that confidence. So the next one is, this is a great, great tool. And we've talked about how you can find things within your collection that your spouse connects to and tell them the stories of that because they're things they can relate to. Well, another thing, too, is I have seen a lot of collectors get their husbands involved in collecting by finding something within the genre of, as you know, I like to use the term figurative art, or you can say dolls, whatever, that might be more of toy-oriented or something that has more of a masculine feel that they feel comfortable collecting and talking about. But I don't understand why a doll or figurative art wouldn't have that as well. But we got to face realities. So I love this. 2 examples I'm going to give you. Gail Cook, the great collector from Dallas, Texas. She really wanted her husband involved in understanding the idea of her collection. And he happened to be a collector, but he collected primarily watches at the time. And so she started teaching him and showing him the wonder of automatons and the clockwork mechanisms that they embrace. And the reality being that knowing she did that majority of very, very high-end, serious automaton collectors are actually men. That number flips in this case. So she started teaching him about automatons, taking him to auctions, showing him automatons, and he became fascinated by them. And so he started buying the automatons that would fit within her collection. And it started to be really fun for him. And that was a gateway for him to have better understanding of the dolls, because ultimately the automatons, while they have clockwork mechanisms, the figures on them, not dolls, but pieces of figurative art that relate to dolls, it all began to connect the rest of it for him. And he became a huge support to her collecting going on. And I will tell you how she confidently was able to go to next level in building what is considered one of the greatest collections in the world, if not in the past 50 years in history of doll collecting. Another example is the great collector Judy Day in Southern California, who is a wonderful, wonderful person. Just saw her the other day, actually, at one of my table talks, and she's just great. And she really wanted her husband involved, and they had a wonderful relationship, and he was supportive, but she wanted him to really enjoy the hobby with her. So she started introducing him to Schoenhutz, and he would go to shows and auctions and hunt out Schoenhutz for his own little collection. And then also in that process became interested in teddy bears. And again, two categories that have a lot of male collectors in them. And that way they were able to go to auctions and shows and events and things and be able to enjoy the collecting together and build this very diverse and unique collection together that would have traditional dolls, Schoenhutts, teddy bears, all of these things which do connect and tell a great, great story. So those are some of my tips for the collector out there and how you can engage your spouse in this process, both of you working together. Now, I'll tell you, it's getting a lot better out there. With that, let's go back in time, though, before I talk to you about how collectors are working together in partnerships and building their collections. But let's go back to the way it used to be, because it was really different back in the day. Now, we're talking in the 1970s and 80s, and you primarily had the woman was the collector. Often she did not work. The husband made the money, and he kind of made the budget, let's call it, for the world of dolls. And she was bootstrapped in some ways in her ability to build these collections. However, they had creative manners in which to do it. And it was really funny back in the day and how they would get their really high-end dolls on, a lot of times, I'm not kidding you, skimming the grocery money. And you think I'm joking, but it was a real thing. I remember back in, I want to say 1988, 1989, I was packing a collection in Whittier, California. And I remember the guy's name was Houston Knight. It was a beautiful, beautiful collection that this wife who had passed away had built. And so there I was working in the doll room, and Houston Knight was talking to me, and I was telling him that this collection's probably about $1.2 million, and he just couldn't believe it. He's like, I don't understand how she got that money. She was on such a tight budget over the years. And I started packing the collection, and as I was reaching in to pull the dolls out and take the stands off, I started feeling things inside the dresses of the dolls. And what did I find? $100 bills pinned inside all of the doll dresses. I mean, for a doll collector, just so you know, the perfect hiding spot for money or anything else. And because who's ever going to look under a doll dress? He was shocked. I ended up pulling out about $10,000 in cash from inside all of the doll dresses to give back to him. And he was laughing, and he's like, things are starting to make sense, I guess. She and I were married for, 60 years. And he was in his 80s now, so he was about as old school as they came. And he said, I hadn't set foot in the grocery store in over 55 years. And I was shocked after she passed away when I had to go grocery shopping for the first time. I couldn't believe that milk had come down from $20 a gallon. I was laughing so hard. And the worst thing is, he was serious. She had been building this incredible $1 million collection by kind of exaggerating the prices of groceries, getting a bigger budget in the household, and using the excess to buy dolls. So I love that. And certainly it has changed quite a bit today. We now have far more empowered women who have their own professional careers. And we're going to see in the future millennials who, in many cases, the woman may be the breadwinner in the family and she's going to do what she wants. And you're seeing a lot more marriages where you have separate finances together. So as I said before, it's not all the financial aspects of it. It is just about working together in collecting is fun. So we've come a long way, baby, I guess is the phrase. And you're seeing women no longer really having to skim the grocery money. Thank goodness. I want to leave you on this podcast with a thought about something I've witnessed over the years that helped me to really see and understand how the partner, the spouse of a collector, in the end, really will and has respected and loved what you've done with your collection. And it's a really beautiful, bittersweet moment. There have been many living rooms I've sat in with the husbands of collectors, and the wife had passed away, and we talked about Houston Knight before. And I've been working with them on this collection and talking to them about it. And one of the things that's really fascinating to me is there are a significant number of these men who actually have a really hard time selling the collection. And many of them don't. They can't bear the idea of removing these pieces from the house because it feels like it's taking away the last vestiges of their wife, of their partner, of their spouse, and something that was, as I often say, such a powerful extension of their life and who they are. And for a lot of them, it's really interesting. They say, I never really got it while they were here and they were collecting. I didn't really do anything with them in their collecting. It was their thing. But now they're gone. And I look at these pieces and they become so important to me because it's all I have left. And they can never let them go. So this is a really interesting study and analysis of the reality that in the end, they really do respect who you are. They really do love you as a collector. They may have to learn it after it's too late, but it's there. So for those spouses who maybe don't engage or involve themselves in this collecting, maybe take the time to do it now and not find out later on how much it really did mean to you in the end. Although, let me tell you this one story, because no, it's not always like that, obviously. You have sometimes situations where the dolls are out the door as quickly as possible. I tell this story, it's shocking and slightly funny as well, I guess. I don't know. Depends on your sense of humor. But true stories, many years ago, I remember, and this was back in the day. So different generation of collectors, obviously. And I remember getting this phone call. A husband called me and gave me the sad news that his wife had passed away. And I knew her from the auctions for years. And I said, I'm so devastated over this. She was a fabulous woman and truly a great collector. And I hadn't heard that she had passed. And thank you so much for personally calling and telling me. When did this happen? And he's like, about 5 hours ago. And I was kind of silent for a second. And I was like, I'm so honored that you called me so soon to tell me this right away. And is there anything I can do? And his next sentence, I could still hear him saying, yeah, you can get here and get the dolls out, please. I vowed to her all these years that if she went first, you were the first call I'm making. I stopped for a minute and was like, well, I think maybe you should take some time to process this and we should circle back around in 6 months or so and maybe we can talk about it at that point. You clearly need some time. You say, I don't need time. I need you to come here and I want these dolls out. So, I mean, he loved his wife, but he was just like, he wanted to move on from the dolls as soon as possible. So the ending being, he's like, when can you be here? And I said, well, my next opening would be Friday. I could plan to fly in and see you Friday. And he's like, well, that's fine. The funeral's at 10, so why don't you come after 1 p.m.? That has obviously changed, I think, over the years. And I think it's much different now in the sense that the husbands do allow process and do allow time, and they need that time. And we respect that because part of it is they've become far more cognizant and understanding of the collecting as being a true and beautiful extension of the personality of their spouse. The reality is couples who collect make greater collections, have happier marriages, have adventures and fun and joy together in this process of building something beautiful. And you can be engaged in it. You don't have to necessarily be the collector in the classic sense, but you can be the validator of all of this. And in the process, you will grow and understand, like Chuck Sorolla did, how it's really fun. You will help your spouse lead the happy life of a collector. You will build a marriage that grows and is joyful within the context of collecting. You will have the most wonderful adventures and wonderful life together, and you will build together a much finer collection.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Curious Collector. The Curious Collector is hosted by Stuart Holbrook and produced by Tammy Trujillo. We invite you to follow us on social media and feel free to leave any questions you have for Stuart on Facebook at Stuart Holbrook-Theriaults or follow the Theriault Company Facebook page. And you can stay up to date with the latest auctions and events at Theriaults.com. We'll talk to you on the next episode of The Curious Collector.